So for our next session, the last panel of the morning, it's a very important session. It is on the topic of impact finance and social environmental impact business. One of the panelists, when we were preparing, said, I'm surprised that you actually included this in an investment conference. But as we know, SMEs are really important for the future growth of Vietnam. So in this session, we will hear different impact finance approaches about opportunities and challenges for SMEs with an environmental and social objectives to access ESG lens capital. I would like to invite the panelists to the stage, which include Ms. Anh Do, partner from Patamar Capital, Ms. Thao Tran, from the Vietnam Country Director of New Energy Nexus, Jung Min Dat, or Taddy, the CEO of Bencon, and Bicky Nguyen, the co-founder of Cricket One. For this panel, it will be moderated by Serge LeVert-Chiasson, Managing Director from Sarona Asset Management, who joined us all the way from Canada. Serge, I will leave it to you to introduce the panel.
So I'm losing my voice, which is a good thing, because you'll get to hear from the panelists rather than the moderator. But before we start, I was just asked to briefly describe a little bit about this panel. We'll be focusing on SMEs, which are, as we all know, the cornerstone of every economy, including Canada's. They represent and employ over 60% of employees in Canada, and I suspect the same is probably accurate about Vietnam. But we'll also be talking about how those SMEs, if we invest properly, can really support impact and the development of a sustainable economy. So without further ado, I did introduce myself yesterday, so I will pass on the introduction to who I am. Just rest assured that I've come to Canada, from Canada to Vietnam, and I've always had a great time visiting your beautiful country, discovering the people, the culture, and the companies that we've supported. So thanks again for inviting us from so far away. I'll pass it over to my colleagues who will briefly introduce each other.
So this is time for time management kick in. So my name is Vicky. I'm the co-founder of Cricket One. We are a company specializing in farming and processing cricket into different ingredients for food and pet food ingredients. We're in the business for more than 6 years, and right now we are handling about 45 tons of cricket monthly. And then by end of July, that number will be tripled to 150 tons a month. So right now we have our products sold to more than 22 different countries across 4 continents. So thanks a lot for having me here today.
Hello everyone, my name is Anne. I'm a partner at Patamar Capital, and we are an impact venture capital firm that invests in early stage technology companies to unlock economic opportunities for the low and middle income population in Southeast Asia, as well as the small and medium enterprises. We have presence across 6 different countries and have invested in more than 50 companies in the region.
Hi everyone, my name is Thao. The country director of New Energy Nexus Vietnam. So New Energy Nexus started in the USA since 2004. We are a non-profit accelerator supporting clean energy startups. And further on, we will open to support climate tech startups in the future. We have presence in 11 countries with 12 chapters. In Asia, we are in China, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, and Thailand. In Vietnam, we've been operated since 2019, and until now, we support nearly 50 startups with different programs activity we'll share later. Happy to meet you all.
Great, and I am Teddy, the CEO and co-founder of Bencon, a startup provide energy saving solution for air conditioner. Air conditioners everywhere. We're happy to provide the solution to help you save 20 to 50% of energy. That's why I'm here in the topic of environment, socials, and governance today. And why don't we say we have a big clap for her with áo dài, very beautiful today. So Vietnamese, right? Thanks a lot. So back to Serge. Thanks a lot.
So maybe we'll start with a few two icebreaker questions for the entire group. Here we have, I suspect, investors who are interested in investing in impact or ESG, but why should they care about SMEs in Vietnam? Why should we focus our attention on SMEs in Vietnam? So maybe we'll start with Tad and make our way back.
Yeah, thanks for the first question. I think the reason they focus is because we have potential. So every time we look at potential, right? So we start up an SME, we are super potential. So that's why the investors should look at us. Not right now, but next 5 and 10 years later, you will get big success like LeVert, she did it like 7 years ago, right? And Công already said, to do something good, then God will bring gift to us later. Yeah, so back to probably, and probably say, why should you invest on impact?
Sure. Yeah, I think from the investor point of view, it is definitely a very compelling case to invest into SMEs in Vietnam. I think let's start with some dry numbers. So I think Serge was saying in Canada, SMEs account for 60% of all enterprises. That number in Vietnam is actually 98%. And all these SMEs actually accounted for more than 50% of GDP in the country and employed more than 70% of the overall labor force. So I think the numbers itself speaks volume about why it is necessary to invest and help accelerate the growth of these SMEs, because indirectly and directly you are also contributing to helping alleviating poverty, especially in rural areas where the big conglomerates or the big corporates probably don't have as much of a strong presence. The second reason is from the fund's perspective, we are interested in investing in SMEs because it's helped promote gender equality. 25% and rising numbers, this is the number of female-owned SMEs in Vietnam. And this number has been increasing year by year. So investing in SMEs is also helping promoting gender equality in Vietnam. And finally, because we're a tech fund, we invest into technology companies. What we're very excited about is that SMEs, after COVID pandemic, they turn out to be the most aggressive group in terms of digital adoption. So you'll be very surprised to find out, according to a survey recently conducted by the Australian government, 75% of small business owners in Vietnam have reported more than 10% of their income coming from online channels. And more than half of the SMEs actually thinking investing in digitization for that will actually help them increase profitability. So that is the reasons why we're very strong in backing SMEs, and we've been investing to support more than 40,000 of SMEs in Vietnam since we've been here.
So we don't really have a very sexy, beautiful story. So this is where there's a market opportunity, and then we would jump into that. So for our business case, it's like we see a very big shortage happening, also about to happen in the proteins market industry. So that's why we see opportunities, and then we believe it's like setting up a business, follow certain framework to attract investment or to attract attention from the community will not be a way to grow. But actually our mojo and the foundations of the company is like to grow an industry. And if you want to grow an industry, it has to be in a very sustainable, apart from being scalable, it has to be a sustainable way. And that is the way forward. Because at some point it's like we don't have the luxuries of affording different natural resources or input resources to have solve the macro problem or micro problem. So this is more or less is the way that we start the business and build a business so far. And of course it's like anyone, if being conscious about what's happening next, then we should be prepared. So it's not going to be an optional solution, but it has to be a must-go solution.
For us, so we focus on clean energy. It's a very niche area in ESG or impact in general. And everybody, when approached, they would ask me why we do accelerating in clean energy startups. It's very much starting from 2004, where our co-founders, founders, get that budget from California state. and they pitched their program to support clean energy. And they actually run that program and support a number of startups in California grow. And those startups, they start to provide their services and products to the users. And the users use clean energy. And it actually leads to a lot of GHG emission reduction, more jobs, I would say green jobs to people, and people change their behavior of being more environmental friendly, more using clean energy, and they act towards the climate change. So all of that impacts and theory change, measurement, and so on, help us to shape our vision since 2004 until now, continue supporting clean energy entrepreneurs. So not only supporting though, we also fund the startups in California, New York, and Indonesia. And for those who are interested in funding, one of our pilot program in Indonesia, we have funded 1.1 million to 7 startups in Indonesia, working together with them with the Catalyst funding module. After 3 years, we support them to secure 20.1 million in total for the next round of funding, which is 20 times more. And it's the model we want to bring to Vietnam. And as people were sharing, with the recent research, we know that last year only 3% of impact investment done in Vietnam. So it's the rest 97 is other type of funding, not impact. We would like to further increase this number from this year on.
Great. I've got a few directed questions. Maybe, Anne, can you help us share, make this real for the audience? Can you share a success story that you may have come across in your portfolio where you've supported an SME here in Vietnam, and how did that benefit low or middle income populations?
Sure, yes. So we actually recently invested in a company in the FMCG distribution space in Vietnam. So if you are Vietnamese locals, or if you have been in Ho Chi Minh City, if you get to just take a step outside of the city or just wander into one of the narrow alleys, you kind of discover it's very different from the main streets. You don't no longer see convenience stores. You just see a tight web of retailers who are like mom and pop shops and serve the neighborhood. Okay, so digitizing these mom and pop shops, who account for 75% of all the FMCG volume in Vietnam, has been a real challenge. And I think there are different ways of tackling it. The way that this company, Vigo, which we invested in, they were trying to ensure that they understand the pain points of these aunties and uncles who run the mom and pop shops. Essentially, they want access to a greater variety of goods and products. But they are restricted by the local wholesalers, dictating what they should sell and dictating like the price they are able to sell, right? And then we see another weak link in the entire supply chain, which are the brand agents. So they work exclusively with one brand to sell one single product. So if you are like a Pepsi agent, you can only sell Pepsi. But you have to go down and then build a relationship with all these aunties and uncles, and it takes a long time to get the rap put in and to get them to buy from you. Right. So what if we enable these agents to be able to sell a better range of products? Right? It is the same relationship that they already have, but now they can sell more, earn more. Right? What will be the additional income uplift these like mini entrepreneurs will be able to get? What will be the additional income the mom and pop shops will have? And at the same time, then you have the distributors who have a lot of warehouses empty. What if you help them to sell more and help them to much more integrated and stay in the industry? So this is the mission of Vigo. When we looked at the company back in October 2021, they were only serving 4,000 mom and pop shops in just a very fragmented area in the South Vietnam. Fast forward until today, they are already serving more than 44,000 of mom and pop shops and covering more than 50% of all the provinces. So the scale up using technology, supporting and really understanding the pain points of the retailers and the agents have been tremendous. On average, agents earn more than 30%, and on average, it is quite the similar numbers for retailers. From a financial perspective, and why I'm making the case for investing into SMEs in Vietnam, so when we opportunistically structure that round for ourselves in Q4 2021, just very quickly, 3 or 6 months later, we receive another term sheet at a much larger round, so it's like 10 times the money that we invested in the company, with a much higher valuation as well.
Great, thanks, Anne. Thao, you mentioned that you work with climate entrepreneurs. What kind of climate entrepreneurs are you looking for? Could you give us a few examples of companies you've worked with? And maybe, I know I've spoken to a few climate entrepreneurs in this audience who might be interested in speaking to you after the panel, so just give us an idea of who you're looking for.
Sure. So traditionally, our core values support clean energy. I'll talk about it first. Clean energy includes renewable energy and energy efficiency. And for renewable energy, we're not supporting big projects of renewable. We have megawatts of solar power and wind power and so on, right? And it have a lot of investment. We do not support them. We support more of entrepreneurs' innovative ideas around it. So more O&M, any operation and maintenance initiative that support renewable energies, including those from biomass or biogas. For energy efficiency, we now working with number of startups or entrepreneurs provide solutions to monitor the electricity using in the building, or they have the electricity moduling for the whole building, for the new, for the one on the design or for the one who already exists. And entrepreneurs like Bencon who make the AC work more efficiently in the building. Further on, for climate tech startups, we were supporting other startups like one startup from Canada. They doing this. They do the fresh. They put the fresh carbon into cement. They make it lighter cement, and actually it's reduced the time to make the cement itself, and it's more like having the new material for the building. And then I'm also working with startups who providing new diesel fuel, in which they actually making your car running with less noise and less the carbon emission itself. Anything related to carbon emission reduction or GHG emission reduction that we can actually measure, and it's good for the climate. It's good for the environment. It could be falling into our category to support. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Thao. Tad, you've built a business where you save people money and you make money saving that money. So that's a great business model. Do you have any advice for other entrepreneurs in the room, and maybe for investors that might be interested in investing in SMEs? What should they know about investing in your company, for example, or a company like your company before they start that process?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Before I started this business, I only worked for some multinational company, including like Forsos or in group of Google and Qualcomm. We make the product to compete with Apple, something like that. So just say a little bit about the background. I'm a technology guy, technology lover. And when we want to do something new, we question ourselves. So how can we create a solution to give more value to people? That's the very first question that me and my co-founder, we keep asking for a very long time, even with we have hundreds of ideas, as technology people, we have so many ideas, but we need to pick one which we can create the value to people. And I think with that mindset in mind, we create a technology. We have patent in Vietnam, in US, on the trademark, something like that. And with the business model, we work on the no upfront cost for building it, and we only share the profit with them after they use our solution. So I think it's kind of like win-and-win scenario for both sides, from impact business perspective and for our customer. And I think that will be the point where the investor, they will like it. They like it. And they want to give, some opportunity for SME and startup, just to make a better life. So that will be the better money, right? So in the concept of ESG, we have dedicated people in our team for ESG, from very beginning. Even we are very small startup, and that we learn a lot from the ESG mindset, and that going back and contribute into our business direction. Even though there were some very difficult time, we almost failed, but with that mindset in mind, we keep going up, and I think ESG become a very great tool for not only for investor, but also for impact startup players to navigate. That's the North Star for us to navigate the business. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Dad. Vicky, we had some pretty interesting conversations in preparation for this panel. I was really intrigued by the work you did on working with smallholder farmers to be your suppliers for your company, but also trying to sell the impact you were having to your clients. Can you just help us understand a bit more the importance of selling the impact to your stakeholders, both the suppliers and your clients?
So first, allow me to share a bit of background of discussions. So, cricket is known and proven to be a solution to tackle climate change and global food crisis. So I think it's a very great source of entity protein. But then for our business model, 60% of the input material, which is a live cricket, is coming from our own farms, and then the rest is coming from the satellite farms. So there's quite a clear process to acquire and also to invite the new farmers or household into our system. So first they have to sit in classroom setup, understand firstly why cricket, and they have to understand the critical part of cricket farmings, and then they get hands-on training at the farms, and then they get the model to test at home, and then after one cycle we evaluate the impact, and then we start signing the contract, and then they put some skin in the game, which is fixing up their shed house, and then we inspect it best, and we start pushing in our equipment, tool, breeds, and also the feed, and then we buy all of the output from them. So this is the impact from the social perspective that we are giving. And the second part of why it's important to us. So we don't try to sell the concept of cricket protein. We are selling the ideas of protein itself. And when it comes to protein, so it fit into a mega massive market size. And in that game, having a good quality, having a very highly certified processing facility that's something that not only us can have. So what we do is we sell an extra story that our client can cascade that message to their end consumers. So not a platform paying for something sustainable, paying something farm responsibly, but then also getting somewhere from the Far East a better livelihood. So for us, it's the whole combinations of ESG value attack into our product and validate our product based on the ESG level, give us a very strong, outstanding criteria when we compete with the other protein source or we compete with a similar fellow in the industry. For example, it's there's a lot of protein shake, meat replacement company in the US. So if they look into the options of what they can choose, so they can have plant, they can have insect protein, they can have also lab grown protein, but then they start to put everything on the same level of quality, level of value, and then they're going to start evaluating who's making more impact. So producing a product aligned with the ESG indicators give us a very strong competitive in the global market.
Thanks so much, Vicky, and I think it makes a good case for investing in SMEs with impact in Vietnam. I'm going to ask a general question again to the entire group, starting with Vicky. If we think about, we often talk on these panels about successes. Look at all the great things that we've been doing in our portfolio, et cetera. I actually think it's more useful for you and for us to talk about maybe lessons learned, which is code word for failures, and what did we learn about those things? So can you tell me about a challenge that your business is facing that maybe the audience can learn from as you've been developing your business model?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge is just to convince people about the ideas of consuming cricket. So even I couldn't convince my own parents at the beginning. So the only person who believed me was my husband and of course my co-founder. So those are the two only believe in this idea. And then once you convince people surrounding you, then you have to convince people outside, which is the consumers. So let's not put the perspective of consumer perception toward cricket consumption in this panel, but let's talk about investment itself. So I think we had also a discussion a long time ago, but the business model of Cricket One and not giving the VC venture capital fund a very strong appetite. So when they look at Cricket One, they think, oh, this is just another production company, and then they classify us as a traditional production company. And there's no ability to scale, or there's no ability to be in the top 3 of producers globally. So that's why it took us a lot of effort to add the ideas of tech into it. So it doesn't matter how many patents we got. So we got 5 patents itself in farming, but then we always have to constantly to prove and explain to the investors like chicken farming, pig farming, cow farming, it takes like 50, 70 years to get a fixed protocol for the best results, for the best efficiency. So it's the same thing with cricket. So coming out of the production sector doesn't mean we're a traditional one. So we utilize existing technologies, but then we make it more efficient, we make it more optimal. This is also innovation, and then we should be classified as food tech. So doesn't matter how hard we try, but at the end, we realize there are some certain group in the whole investment scenery that looking into the sectors and have more a patient capital runway or a longer expectation of return. So we have most of the attraction coming from family office, philanthropists, and normally it's also the billionaire type of angel investors. So at the end, it's we closed the deal so far 3 round investments with 2 family office and 1 single investors, billionaire type. And we appreciate very much 500 startup who believe in the idea already long time ago. So yeah.
So Becky, if I just want to paraphrase to make sure that we heard some of the lessons learned here. One is making sure that you tell the right story to your audience, to the different stakeholders.
Yes.
Also having the right kind of investors
Yes.
who believe in that story. So you've got those 2 really important lessons learned.
So I think it's being a good founder, you also have to understand or have a good sense of people. So after a few first sentence, you have to evaluate and analyze what would be their interest, and then you frame your story differently.
So investing in SMEs is like picking your future spouse.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So other lessons learned. So I know both Thao and Anne have been involved in building portfolios of companies. When you look at the SMEs that you've supported or you've invested in, what maybe mistakes or failures occurred over the years, and what did you learn from that? What can the audience here learn from that?
Sure, yeah. I think before we go straight into that, I think I just wanted to echo exactly what Vicky was saying. The biggest challenge for SMEs in Vietnam is access to financing, whether that's debt, whether that's equity investor, and then never mind if you're an impactful company, if you target, after ESG, if you're a purposeful companies, then the access to financing is not only about the amount needed. Overall, 30 billion of financing gap already been identified for most SMEs in Vietnam, and 60% of them reported that they don't know where to turn to. The banks make it so difficult to borrow, right? So much paperwork. Then what else? And then the second part about access to financing is who do you turn to, right? For companies like Vicky, for example, what kind of investors? I think it took Cricket One and some other companies, a long time to find that niche group of investors. So one thing that I think collectively as investors we should definitely work on, and let's join hands in doing so, and then let's try our best to create, an ecosystem map. So startups like Cricket One or Bankan will know, like, okay, here are the various options with debt or equity or some kind of impact-linked finance. These are the investors I can start talking to and who already understand the problem I'm solving, who have a very strong mandate and can invest in. So it's not a trial and error process, which takes a long time for the startup founders as well. From my, going back to Serge questions, for me as an investor, when I work with impactful startups in Vietnam, the biggest challenge I've found is most Vietnamese are very entrepreneurial. Around 1 in every 4 Vietnamese would like to open their business one day, right? So for most these young business owners, getting from 0 to 1, they would definitely make it happen. They will hit the ground running. However, the capacity building, right, the guidance, the mentorship, the business development required in order for them to get from 1 to 10. This is where I think generally the community needs to work on more collectively. Especially when you have a warm heart, you have a good intention to do something good for the society. I think these young business owners, then it takes them some time to realize you need to balance it with a rational mindset, that you need to have a sound business plan. Otherwise, the good intention is not enough because you need to be able to generate enough runway and cash flow to sustain your business and create a meaningful and long-term impact.
Also, continue what Anne just said, cover 50% of what I want to share. We very much ecosystem builder for this clean energy innovation ecosystem in Vietnam, and we face a lot of challenges when we first started. And until now, the challenges are still existing. So you see on the stage here, right, and that Benkan and Vicky, they are brilliant entrepreneurs to me already. And this field in clean energy, we don't have many to be actually called innovative entrepreneurs. So majority of the SME or startup founders that we're working with, if talking about another source of finance other than their own money or they borrow money from family or friends, they would talk about bank loan traditionally with their collateral. If I talk to them, hey, let's look at equity investment, debt financing, impact loan, and so on. I said, what are they? And why do I need to share my equity to other people? And they would have that question, and they very much postpone from knowing or start approaching or even just talk to the investor already. So we have that challenge in our work. Let's say, okay, it can't be us telling them within one day what are those finance options. It is our mission to educate and to get them soaked into that environment, just to get them to know, and then they will be want to be connected with those finance options. And then now we talk about impact investment. Right? We talk about the investment part already. We need to also tap in impact. I really need to ask my startups all the time if you know what impact is and how to measure impact, and how you actually have the tools and equipment and methodology to measure it. So a number of our, I would say again, majority in clean energy, they don't know what they are doing is impactful. They don't know. That is exceptional. So I have one. One investor from China, last time they come to Vietnam, they want to invest in EV infrastructure system in Vietnam. And I happened to introduce them to all the EV startups and entrepreneurs I know, and they have good interview with them all. And at the end, they decided not to invest in Vietnam because several reasons. First, no regulations yet supporting developing EV infrastructure in Vietnam. Second, the entrepreneurs, they just don't know about what they are doing, even if whether or not it is impactful, and they don't have the data room, and they don't just want to approach the investors. So it means that entrepreneurs in clean energy, in EV, they are not ready yet. Though we have the name of that bike and Select Motors, they are big names, they are successful already. still underway, but not the other EV startups or entrepreneurs. So now the investors decided to invest in Indonesia, where I will have chapter 2. And it's a pity to me when we building the ecosystem and we see the money falling out of the countries should have been for us to further develop in our clean energy ecosystem, but not. So those are the challenges, but also the lesson learned for us. Okay, as intermediaries, trying to work with Patamar, with other entrepreneurs, how we actually can get our startup to be more investable in terms of getting them to know more of the finance options, and to get them really know the impact and how to measure impact and have really good theory of change and stories to tell the investors.
Just before you go to Tad, I just want to paraphrase a little bit for the audience. What I've heard is really important to build an ecosystem around the funders and the entrepreneurs, the importance of mentoring entrepreneurs so that they can speak with investors in an appropriate way. And Thao, I think you really made the point, really important to upskill the entrepreneurs and their ability to speak the language of impact for those kinds of investors. All right, Tad.
I think that's only cover all of the major challenges that we have. And instead of like talking about challenge, I just want to say thanks to Ang and Thao in the very early day when we just started. Actually, we started with a good heart, right? But the world outside talking about financing, talking about lots of investment option, we don't know. And I believe there are so many entrepreneurs outside, out of this room, also don't know about that. Even they are doing some good thing. So this is just my voice to represent for tech startup. And I would like to ask for your support from investor, consultants, or any association. We have some mentorship program about impact startup. It's just to give some guideline for like some technical people, even business people. But when they start to think about doing something which can have impact to our society, there are some road, there are some way already, some case study already, so they can follow, rather than asking them to run trial and error so many times. Personal for me, I done lots of trial and error until today, so only like nearly 3 years. I learned a lot, but I still think there are lots of things I need to learn too. And I hope that from this very big event today, thanks to Vâng and Mimi, it's really great. Hope to see more events in future, but also give some chance for tech startup, to learn more and to develop themselves and to get access to impact finance. Thanks a lot.
Right. So if I paraphrase that, it's about being humble enough to learn from what others have done, but also paying it forward, helping other tech entrepreneurs learn what you've learned over the past decade of learnings that you've had with your company. I'm going to take a pause and see if we can have some questions from the audience. We've got a few here, so we'll start with the gentleman, if there's a microphone.
I'm Fat. I'm a technical entrepreneur as well, but I also run a coconut plant in Bến Tre called Green Cocoa. And we see a lot of opportunities about carbon capture, carbon credits, and we working on the project of, we try to turn the shell of the carbon into biochar and we put back in the soil. But for that also a long-term project. So my question more to Thao and An is normally what is the expectation for an investor for the return of investment? The second one is, I heard a lot about challenge, success stories, but do you have a particular mistakes, for example, in the investment in a startup? maybe a biggest one, and maybe we can be one of them. We don't know. So that we would like to hear more what can be a mistake and we can learn from, and how we can make things better, and we try to make in a bigger scale to have a bigger impact in the Mekong Delta. Because I am technical and my background more in the post-harvest technology, in replacement of chemicals, without using chemical for treatment and storage. And I see a lot of chance that we can bring into the Mekong. And so I would like to hear more and how we can move forward with those impact projects.
So if I paraphrase your question, you're interested in the return expectations,
Yes.
but also, and I did notice that as well, they obfuscated a bit of my question. They didn't really provide perhaps a real mistake or failure, and what can we learn from that in order for you to avoid those mistakes. So maybe we'll start with Anne in terms of maybe return expectations and a real mistake. You can maybe not name the company, but maybe something that happened that you said, if I had known, I would have done it differently.
The biggest if possible.
Okay. So I think on the return expectations, because it's more on the environmental and energy related side, so I let Thao take that one. So for me, I think being in as a venture capitalist is like sometimes, having a crystal ball and predicting behavior of the consumers or the SMEs into the future, and it could go either way, right? There are cases when we are fortunately correct, but then there are cases where we unfortunately completely mispredict what's going to happen. So I always say that my biggest mistake hasn't happened yet. It could be the next one. So just kind of like as a guidance for myself to concentrate and do my job well. One thing that I can share, and definitely without naming names. So I think during COVID-19, a lot of consumers' behavior shifted tremendously, right? And then one thing that definitely stayed and stuck with the consumers after COVID-19 is that the switch to more cashless option, right? So that would have been a successful bet for anyone, especially who invest into Momo, for example, because their volume must have increased significantly. Then there's other bets that didn't work out so well. So during the lockdown in Ho Chi Minh City, I think majority of people have to pick up a new habit of online grocery shopping, right? Or getting all kind of like switching 100% to e-commerce, buying from their neighborhoods, buying from a community leader, right? But then the lockdown in Vietnam was only 3 months. It was intense. It was a terrible period, but it wasn't long enough. So that behavior didn't stay, right? And then the moment the economy was open, everyone rushed back to the wet markets, to the supermarkets. So we did make a bet on social commerce during that period where we think that, the behavior of buying from the local community leader in your building might stay. And people will acknowledge how convenient it is to actually get your shopping through someone you know on Zallo, right? And not having to go outside and spend time at the supermarkets. I think similarly, if you project it to the other bigger countries like Shopify or like other quick commerce models, like Shopify had to do a massive layoff in the US because they also mispredict what the consumers would do. Everyone thought online retail will be the way forward, but it ended up like people missing offline retail so much, right? So for that particular company, they realized very quickly that, that was a very one-off thing. And then consumers' behavior, it is what it is today. So they had to pivot their model, and thankfully were able to do that so successfully by launching their B2B projects and working with small restaurants and hotels.
And return expectations.
This one, I think particularly for your questions, is more on the energy-related front. And at Patamar, we focus more on the S, the social impact. So I don't want to misguide you by giving a number that probably wouldn't represent what the investors you might be approaching are thinking of.
Hello. Right. So for your question related to the practical action you take into turning all the coconut shell into a biomass, and you make biochar, is that right? And then you also carbon capture and so on. We have been having this conversation with a number of impact investors that we met, and to be honest, for them, when they invest in a impact startup, they would want to see both the return on interest and also investment and also impact happening at the same time. So actually the startup or entrepreneur have double pressure. And it's very hard for those startups, especially now, investing in biomass and make biochar can make profit out of it, as far as I know. One case study in Daklak, I think there's one gentleman doing this biochar machine, making the biochar from the biomass, getting all the waste from the farmers, and then he produced this really beautiful biochar, and he trying to sell it back to the farmers and ask the farmers to use it instead of fertilizers and everything else. But the farmers say no, because they're so much familiar with using the traditional fertilizer with low cost. And for using biochar, they have to change their behavior too. So why doing the new thing? They just don't know it. And he was trying 3 years and it couldn't be successful. So this is very much about all of us over here doing this education and awareness to everyone. So we change the behavior from all of us. But on the investment perspective, the investor will still discussing about the potential, investing in biomass, but they're not putting any money down at the moment, to be honest. And we're trying to push the conversation. So please have faith and confidence in the transition. Yeah.
Sorry, just to make it a bit more clear, is the biochar actually is only our byproduct, but our main product is the energy production and the carbon removal credits. Those are the two things that we think they can come with the main income and shorter return of investment.
Great, thanks.
Yes. Would love to speak to you later on about that.
Great, and which is a good segue because I think lunch is coming very, very quickly. I think there was another question here from the lady in the front.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for the speakers today and the moderator. On our insightful information, really thank you. But my question will be to Tati Chu. I'm really interested into the sensor for AC. And my question is, if a company or anyone living in our own building, and normally the AC will be controlled by the building managers or something, right? So how does your sensor projects work with those? And how does it help many tenants in there can control their AC by themselves and measure it by themselves? Because it's not included into the electricity metric.
I think the question is quite special for me, right? Probably I can talk with you more.
I think the only person on this panel that can speak to that is you, Tad.
Thanks for that question. And I could say, there are two sources of energy waste. One is you use very old machine, including some big building. And the other is about just the way we are using the air conditioners. And if everybody very responsible using air conditioner, then Bencon should not exist. So we are here because we know that we are, wasting a lot of energy just because the way we are using, including big building and very modern building, something like that. So our target will be, just to save every single kilowatt hours of energy wasting because of people, because the way we are using it. So we picked a very big customer segment, not really big, very niche customer segment. This is about retail chains, where you have to manage like thousands of stores, thousands of air conditioners across Vietnam, for example, and university where you have like 1,000 classes. So how to manage that? That's it, like the first customer that we are serving. But later on, our purpose, our target will be like every single air conditioner, including the air conditioner at your home. That is our vision, our target. If you're really interested on that, after this panel, I can talk with you more. But for everybody, my message is we do enjoy a lot with the air conditioners, right? So today, you know about a startup want to come and help you to save the energy. But, the best way to kill that startup is everybody, just to use the air conditioner very responsible. That's the way, if we are dying, but we are happy that, you are doing a great thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Just before we break for lunch, I'd love for you to all share 1 or 2 key takeaways to help the audience do the work that they do when they go back to the office. Remember, everyone's going back to the office on Monday. They need something to get them motivated. What would be the thing to motivate them, particularly when it comes to SME and impact investing? We'll start with Becky and we'll make our way back.
So from our case, I would say don't make ESG become a buzzword. So really work it out. So there's everyone talk about ESGs, but how many of us really have a life cycle assessment report done with actual numbers instead of using public numbers and doing manual calculations? So I think that is something that all of us who are working toward a sustainable future, then we should try to invest into that. And this could be also an opportunity for any other entrepreneurs looking for an opportunity or an initiative to start thinking what's next for them. Is instead of like for SME or for startup, it would be too costly for us to install and implement measurements or assessments real time, or just a final report every year at our operations. How about just have a smaller scale, flexible, and easy to adapt for SME, for startup? So at least it's like we have an actual factual numbers report to make ourselves outstanding.
Great, thank you, Becky. Anne?
Yeah, I think for me, the action is let's just invest into this space. And I think for the entrepreneurs, I just want to share with you that a lot of motion have kickstarted since last year towards the creation of a group called Vietnam Impact Investing Network. And I see a lot of familiar faces here who are founding members of this group. So please do reach out to any of us. And then we are working very hard on pulling together an ecosystem map to provide you with more guidance and give you more access to financing. And for the investors, I think there are multiple ways to invest into SMEs in Vietnam. It doesn't have to be direct investment into one company, but that could be, lending to a debt fund, or could be like investing into innovative fintech solutions that help to bring revenue-based financing, working capital financing. There are multiple ways, and we who are already in the ecosystem always welcome a conversation with other fellow investors who are keen to join hands with us.
For me, it would be, again, BenCon is one example. We're not the only one who support BenCon until now. There are also other organizations, and we are friends with all that organization. We say, hey, let's stick together and let's support the entrepreneurs to be more business, to be more successful, to get more investment, to be more themselves and get the environment protected. And also, one of the other things when we are building this ecosystem is that everybody work together. BenCon is actually now working with other entrepreneurs to join hand, because the whole solution for getting the whole building being efficient in terms of using power is not only AC, it's also about electricity and water and everything else. So he's joining hand with other entrepreneurs to put the things together. My message would be, I believe that all of us here have the love and passion toward environment, social impact, and so on. Please keep enriching your love and passion. Please educate each other so that we will be doing things more impactful, and let's collaborate to support these entrepreneurs become more successful and more investment, of course.
Yeah, thanks for your good work. And so my key takeaway, pretty simple. The first one, from a startup perspective, we don't have to choose either profit or impact, but under the ESG lens, we are encouraged to do both. That's the first key takeaway. The second one, we found that the big business, big corporation, they spend millions of dollars to follow and to do ESG practice, something like that. For SME and startup, that will be a huge opportunity where people need to look into GSG inventory, look into carbon credit, look into sustainability planning and digital transformations. That is the huge opportunity for startup on $1 billion market, and we are ready for that. So the quite positive view from startup.
Okay, I'm going to summarize to make sure everybody remembers all this when they go into the office on Monday. We heard make ESG real. Make sure you report on your impact progress, whichever organization you work for. Invest in the SME space in Vietnam. It's an opportunity you can't miss. Find your ecosystem partners and make impact investment your calling, your life's work. And finally, you can make money and make the world a better place. There doesn't need to be a trade-off. And you can have a huge market in this space. So hopefully these inspiring takeaways will help you bring impact investing in SMEs in Vietnam to life. And I hope we'll get to hear some of those great stories next year at the ESG conference. Thank you.
Thank you.